When Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know very well the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If you will allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also?" He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane, and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods, and so the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped and completely black animals in the flock of Laban, and he put his own droves apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob laid the rods in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the rods. But for the feebler of the flock, he did not lay them there. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man grew exceedingly rich, and had large flocks and male and female slaves, and camels and donkeys. In the mid-1800s, Gregor Mendel, a biologist and Augustinian friar, unlocked the code of genetic inheritance. In a series of experiments with pea plants, he mapped out how dominant and recessive traits are passed down from one generation to the next. Farmers and herders have selectively bred plants and animals for desirable traits since the very beginnings of agriculture. Practical knowledge of how this may be accomplished had been passed down for centuries, but it was only through Mendel's rigorous experimentation that certain immutable laws were discovered that govern inheritance across all species. Mendel is rightly celebrated for his trailblazing work. But what about the work of another experimental biologist who ran his experiments a couple of millennia before Mendel ever broke open a pea pod? What did Jacob ben Isaac discover about heredity by peeling the bark off of various branches and showing them to rutting sheep and goats in order to breed them for desired characteristics? I know what you're thinking. That doesn't quite sound like a rigorous scientific method. But apparently it turned out to be quite successful. So maybe we should give the guy the benefit of the doubt and try to see what he was doing through his eyes. So let's hear the story. This is Retelling the Bible. Episode 10.17. The Man Who Made Goats Stare at Stripes. Jacob was quite excited when he returned to his family's tents that afternoon. He quickly called the whole household together: Leah, Rachel, the concubines, the children who were old enough, and the servants, to share his news. "Well," he said, "I did it. I made the deal that will secure all our futures." His wives and family waited to hear the details, knowing that Jacob loved nothing more than to sing his own praises. "As you know," he went on, addressing his wives in particular, "I have been working for your father for these 14 years to pay the bride price to obtain the two of you. But with that service finally finished, I went to him today to tell him that I would be leaving his service to return to the land of Canaan. But he did not want me to go. Said that I am too good a worker, and he can't do without me. So we made a deal. I said that I would go through the whole flock and select every goat that is striped or speckled, and do the same for the sheep. We would agree that these animals would be mine, and that the white ones would be his. Then I would tend both flocks for many years, and at the end I would take my beasts, and we would go. This way I will have a chance to breed all of the best traits into my own flocks. I'm on my way now to separate the flocks before Laban realizes what a bad deal he has made." "How is this a good plan?" Leah asked incredulously. "Sure, we all know that you are a good breeder, and that the flocks that are under your hand always prosper. But this plan of yours totally depends on my father respecting your flocks and leaving them alone. There is no way he's going to do that." "That's right," Rachel added. Surely you know my father by now. He has already shown you many times that when it comes to his own profits, you cannot trust him, not for 1 minute." But Jacob dismissed their concerns. "You two worry too much," he said angrily. "I am the best negotiator and made a perfect deal. There is no way that Laban can screw me over this time. I have learned my lesson." The two sisters shared a glance that spoke volumes. They both knew their father and their husband too well. Jacob headed out directly to the fold, but he had returned within the hour. "You'll never believe what your father has done now. He has gone through the entire flock and removed every single black and speckled and striped sheep and goat. I look at it, and all I see is a field of white. My shepherds say that Laban's shepherds laughed at me while they did it, and said that they were going to drive the flock 3 days to the east. All those white beasts belong to Laban. This is so unfair. Who could ever imagine that he would do such a thing?" Rachel and Leah said nothing. They had learned a long time ago how Jacob took it when you said, "I told you so." Jacob fell into a deep depression over the next few days. He had had enough of living with and depending upon his father-in-law. Now that his plans for getting away and taking any wealth with him had been dashed, all he saw before him was a dark future. He took some time off work and let the junior shepherds take care of everything. He spent many days wandering through nearby cities. One day, he came home in a better mood. His wives were glad to see it, and they asked him what had finally raised his spirits. "I made a wonderful discovery," he announced. "I was at a market not too far from here, and I came upon a few men sitting on stools and putting on a bit of a show. They were casting pea pods at each other and just talking about whatever came into their heads. It's apparently this new thing that people are doing, and it's getting quite popular. They call it podcasting. Anyways, one of the podcasters, this guy named Joseph, said that he had heard a story about a cow that was standing in front of a pond filled with blood outside of a temple when it was mounted by a bull. And then, when its calf was born, its hide was all red. And the other podcasters said that this was no surprise, because it is well known that this kind of thing happens all the time. Whatever a mother, whether human or animal, sees or hears when she conceives is bound to affect her offspring. So I think I can use this idea to beat Laban at his game. Leah was a bit skeptical. "Come on, Jacob," she said. "Your family has been breeding animals for generations now. So has ours. Rachel and I even took care of all of our father's flocks before you came along. We've all heard crazy ideas like that before, but sensible shepherds know that there are no shortcuts when it comes to breeding. All you can do is mate them carefully from one generation to the next. Well, I'm tired of being told what to do by the so-called experts, Jacob said angrily. I'm going to do my own research, and I'll bet that I can make this work. Breeding season was just beginning, so Jacob put his experiment into action the very next day. He got up early and collected fresh rods from poplar, almond, and plane trees. He carefully peeled off strips of the dark bark to expose white wood underneath. Then he arranged the rods in the water troughs so that when the she-goats and ewes came to drink, they would see a strange striped pattern. That afternoon, when they came to drink, he released the rams and the billy goats and let them do their thing. After that, it was a matter of waiting. 5 months later, when the kids and lambs were born, Jacob was pleased to see that there were indeed a number of striped and spotted coats among them. Now, the genetics of hide coloring are complicated. They are not governed by just one gene pair, and many of those genes are recessive. So the fact that a high percentage of the kids and lambs came out just as varied as Jacob desired would likely not surprise the geneticists. But don't anyone try to explain that to Jacob. He felt completely vindicated and immediately started going around boasting about his wisdom. Later that very week, he was sitting on a stool and throwing pea pods at other bros and explaining to everyone who would listen that he was an utter genius. When the next mating season came around, Jacob doubled down on his strategy. He peeled even more bark off of more rods, and he also tried turning the ewes to make them look at the striped and speckled goats while they were being mounted by the rams. Once again, he was very pleased to see even more animals being born with the proper coloring, which led, of course, to another triumphal tour of the local podcasting circuit. And so, Jacob went from season to season and year to year. Every time the kids and lambs were born, he was all the richer. Laban's flocks were a 3-day journey away, and mostly under the care of his sons. But, from time to time, the sons would travel down Jacob's way. After many years had passed, the sons came, and they saw the vast flocks under their brother-in-law's care. They looked out over the field and saw that there was hardly 1 in 10 that was all white. Shortly afterwards, Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken all that was our father's. He has gained all this wealth from what belongs to our father." When he heard that, he knew that things were soon going to turn against him. And so, he gathered his family one more time. "I think we may be in real trouble this time. Laban is going to turn against us. But it's not my fault. I swear that it is not. I had a dream last night, and in my dream, the God who appeared to me at Bethel came to me, and he revealed that it is not just my genius plan that made all of the lambs and kids so perfectly colored. No, it is God who has blessed me with an abundance of flocks. So, if anything happens to us as a result, don't blame me. It's really God's fault. That is, it is all thanks to the blessings that God has showered on me. And Laban, for his part, well, he's just jealous of my success." I know that many people have struggled with the story of Jacob breeding his flocks. If we treat the Bible as the source of all truth, it seems to be telling us that he was right. A straightforward reading of the story leaves you with the impression that you can change the traits of an animal by controlling what its mother is exposed to when it is conceived. We know that is not true. As Gregor Mendel demonstrated, and all subsequent scientific experimentation has confirmed, inheritance is governed by genes and not affected by external stimuli at the key moment. So, what are we supposed to do with this Bible story that seems to be trying to teach its readers a discredited method of breeding striped and speckled goats? For me, this story is a perfect reminder of the humanity of these biblical stories. Though it is not true that you can change offspring by exposing parents to colors or patterns, it is certainly true that people believed that you could. It seemed quite logical to them. And why wouldn't it, before Mendel's experiments taught us to think differently? This is especially true when you realize that such methods would have doubtlessly produced the desired results by chance, often enough. In fact, the thing that struck me in this telling was not that it seemed to be a reflection of a remote and ignorant age. It seemed oddly familiar. Abraham and Isaac had been wildly successful breeders, but Jacob rejected their tried and true methods to run after some fad that he had heard about on some podcast. It just reminded me so much of the kind of thing that seems to happen so often in our modern anti-science, anti-expert, and do-your-own-research age. Oh, and by the way, sorry about bringing podcasts into Jacob's time. I could hear some of you groaning from the closet where I record my episodes. Of course, the story as it now exists actually includes two explanations for Jacob's extraordinary success at breeding marked animals. At first, Jacob credits his success to his peeled rod method. But later, Once the sons of Laban find out that he has basically taken over all the best of their father's flock, he gives all of the credit to God alone. This is maybe not a direct contradiction, but it probably comes from two different versions of this story being edited together. It did cause me some trouble from a storytelling point of view, but the way that I resolved it also reminded me of the kind of thing we see these days, when influencers and celebrities turn to God once they realize that they might get into trouble for what they have done. So, well, I certainly hope that nobody uses this episode or this story from Genesis as a handy guide to goat breeding. I do think that it has some helpful lessons on humanity that remain quite relevant even today. That is it for this episode of Retelling the Bible. Join us again in 2 weeks' time for another episode that gives you a fresh approach to an old Bible story. The theme music for the podcast is Ada, and the mood music for this episode was, of course, Sheep May Safely Graze. Both pieces are by Kevin MacLeod, are licensed in the Creative Commons, and can be found at incompetech.com. You can contact me on Bluesky at Retelling the Bible, and on the Facebook page Retelling the Bible. Show notes have been posted at retellingthebible.wordpress.com. Thanks to my Patreon supporters for your support for me. What you do for me means a great deal. Go to patreon.com/retellingthebible to join them in supporting this podcast. This is Retelling the Bible, and I have been your storyteller, W. Scott McCandless.